Welcome to the latest Instant Reaction podcast. Then Rob Staton, Robbie Williams with you off the back of an embarrassing defeat for the Seahawks in Buffalo. A truly awful performance by Seattle. Robbie, what did you make of it?
Yeah, super frustrating. You know what? I mean, I was really confident going into this game earlier in the week. I had predicted that we would, win by a couple scores. I mean, I thought it was going to be, I just thought we were trending in the right direction, and we just flat out got out coached today, 100%, offensive side and defense side of the ball. I mean, yeah, we put up 34 points, but I mean, those were really hard earned 34 points. And I'm just super disappointed. This is a game that I thought we should had, and I don't understand. And I know a lot of people are going to blame and pick on the defense. I'm going to pick on the offense right out the gate. I just cannot believe that we ran the ball only 17 times against a defense that struggles to run the football. And for as much crap as I gave DJ Dallas last week, and that he looked to be running much harder today and seemed to be playing, but yet he only had 7 carries for 17 yards or 31 yards, and yet we kept giving him the ball to Travis Homer. And when we did run it, and I don't understand that. And where was our screen passes? Russ got hit 16 times. Where were our screen passes? Where was our game plan to change it up? And it felt like overall we just got out coached all around. Yeah, I'm definitely I'll pick on the defense a little bit later, but right now I'm a little pissed off, Rob, to be honest with you. It was not a very good game.
Being out coached is absolutely the right way to describe it. It was it's just a shambles, really, to come out and to be that flat, to have no energy whatsoever. The Bills were just moving the ball at ease. It was just no resistance whatsoever from the Seahawks. It took them far too long to make any kind of adjustments. The plan was awful. The team just seemed completely out of it. And just, periodically through the game, you'd have little sort of moments like, well, the Seahawks are blitzing all of a sudden and they're creating a bit of pressure and they're getting some sacks and they're trying to fight their way back into the game. And all Buffalo did was, okay, we see that. We'll just throw a screen pass on 3rd and 16 and you get about 30 yards for it. On 2nd and 27, I don't know, we'll just sort of have Josh Allen drop back and just dolly one over in the air for a 35-yard gain, and it's 1st and goal. I mean, just all the way through the game, it was the Bills asking questions of the Seahawks, challenging the Seahawks, taking the game to the Seahawks, applying pressure via the scoreboard to the Seahawks, and Seattle had no answer whatsoever. And look, I'm already seeing it on the blog now, people, and this is what's going to happen, Robbie. People are going to sort of take a step back from this game, and they're going to pause for breath, and they're going to chalk it down to a bad day at the office. It's not a bad day at the office. We have seen this defense for 8 games now. This is what they are. I'm sorry, but it's not good enough. They're giving up too many points, too many yards. It's starting to impact the offense. Russell Wilson, 16 QB knockdowns today, the most of any game in the NFL this season. That is because teams do not fear what Seattle's going to do on the other side of the ball. We've got a lead. We're going to move the ball. We can afford to be aggressive against Wilson. We're going to attack Russell Wilson because we know he is the source of everything for the Seahawks. If you cut the head off, which is the passing game on Seattle's offense, then the snake will die. And that's what they're doing. They're just going to come after Russell Wilson, knowing that, well, do you know what? If he wins the day, then so be it. We'll take our chances with that. If he plays brilliantly and we lose, it's Russell Wilson. If he scores a touchdown on this play because we've gone after him, it's Russell Wilson. We'll come back on our offense and we'll score 7. This is a major issue, Robbie, and it's not just a bad day. Pete Carroll's been quoted in his press conference saying, I don't recognize that game. It's a game I don't have any place in my brain for. Well, I'm sorry, Pete, but we've seen this game 8 times. It's just the difference is now is the Seahawks came off the back of this bye, Robbie, and we said, this is the toughest stretch of the season. This is going to be a real test. We're going to find out a lot about the Seahawks in this run. Well, guess what? They've played 3 games in the 1 and 2. And the only team that they've beaten are a Niners team that, as we can clearly see now, are just so injured beyond all recognition. That is not a credible victory last week against the Niners. It just isn't. They've lost to the Cardinals and they've lost to the Bills and they're playing the Rams next week. What are they, 1 and 4 in the last 5 against the Rams? Or 1 and 5? If they lose next week, they're 1 and 3 against good teams. Their wins so far are against Atlanta, Dallas, New England. the Niners in the state they were last week, and Miami. There's only really one good win there. Reality's starting to bite. And it's not a case of, I don't recognize this game, Pete. You've got to do something about this. You say every single week in the press conference, this is going to get better. This is going to get better. I've got to believe this is going to get better. When we get this player, when Jamal Adams comes back, now I've got Carlos Dunlap, Snacks Harrison, this guy back, that guy back. No, none of it's making any difference. The defense is a shambles. And it's going to cost the Seahawks a prime season of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and I'm starting to get on that board of, it falls on, and I know this is Pete's defense, but I mean, it's going to fall on somebody, and it's going to be Ken Norton Jr. I mean, this is the reality of the situation now. I mean, Ken Norton Jr., I mean, he has some say in how the defense plays. He can't say it's all on Pete and it's Pete's defense or whatever. Like, someone's got to take the fall for this. And at this point, I think, Dan Quinn is sitting out there. I never thought it would be a possibility, but at this point, bring him in. I mean, we've got to do something. I mean, our players look out of position. They look, they didn't seem like they knew half the time what they were doing in the beginning. Like, and I know I saw a bunch of people just hammering Jamal Adams, like, oh, he's just terrible. He's terrible. He's terrible. I mean, look what they were doing with him. If you look at what they were doing in the first quarter, he was lining 15 yards up off in the backfield in the safety, and they're asking him to come down and blitz 15 yards as soon as the ball is snapped. He's not even getting close to getting home there. So that was ridiculous. As soon as he got up to the line, he started applying a little bit more pressure. But I would love to see them just not bring him up to the line and then blitz every single time. Bring him up and have people drop back, but do not put him on Stephon Diggs. It didn't make any sense. Clearly, Jamal Adams is not a cover safety. They need to recognize his skill set. Don't do that. If you want to put someone else on him, like a DJ Reed or someone else that like Stephon Diggs to guard him, do that. But I mean, you see him he got toasted up by Diggs. And then, I think that the hate on Jamal Adams mostly is just coming because of the compensation we gave him. He's still a really good football player. I think people are
they don't know what to do with him though, Robbie.
I know, when they're using him wrong. They're using him completely wrong. Exactly.
This is why I was very wary of the deal.
Right.
This is why I was wary of the deal. Sorry. This is why I was wary of the deal, Robbie, because I just don't think the Seahawks, the Seahawks have a structure of what their defense is. You do that. You do this. This is your role. And they've traded for a player who needs to be a Swiss Army knife. And they don't really know what to do with him. And blitz for him for a bit. We'll make him the designated blitzer, or we'll have him try and come. No, you've got to work that guy into. You've got to kind of build the defense around him. And they're not kind of doing that. They're trying to place him into this thing. And then when it doesn't work, we'll make him a blitzer.
Yeah, they're asking him to do way too much too. I mean, way too much. Yeah, and it's just frustrating to see at this point the lack of game planning and scheming that they're doing. It's very bizarre. We're very lucky to be 6-2 at this point. And, we have an offense that can win a lot of football games. And I think they need to do something different. So at this point, I'm on the fire Ken Norton Jr. train. Let's get somebody else in and see what can happen.
You see, I think I'm more, for a long time, Robbie, I've kind of resisted all of that. I'm not a big go after the coordinator guy. At the end of the day, this is Pete Carroll's defense. He is the head coach. He's a defensive head coach. It's on his shoulders to make sure that this defense is performing better than that. And it's certainly on John Schneider and Pete Carroll's head to make sure that they've got a better defense. So they're not even having to make trades like for Jamal Adams 2 weeks before training camp or whatever it was, because they've not done anything to improve the unit, because they looked at the unit and thought, actually, the only change is we've swapped Benson Mayowa for Jadeveon Clowney, because at that point, Quinton Dunbar was awaiting news on a potential trial or whatever, a charge in Florida. So they go and make Jamal Adams. The whole construction of the defense was poor in the offseason. And now we're sort of left with this situation here. And look, you can't just keep coming out every week and saying it's going to get better. We're halfway through the season now. We are halfway through the 2020 NFL season. This Seahawks defense is not showing any signs of getting better. You can't even clasp to the fact that they had, 7 sacks today, because they had 7 sacks. And yet they were giving up 9 yards of play right up until the end, when the Bills just rained everything. It went down to sort of 6 or 7 yards in the end because of the kneel downs and because of the short yardage runs as they were killing time. Right before that, it was 9 yards of play. So they would give up a sack and be like 2nd and 20 or 2nd and 15. And then they'd just give up a huge play and it'd be 1st and 10 and they'd be rolling. There was no down and distance that was as an issue at all for the Bills. And they've got no ideas on offense. It's just basically sit back in zone and hope for the best, hope that the 4-man rush can get home, or it's blitz, 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 and that can work well. But as we see, wise, savvy offensive coordinators will just do something as remarkable as call a screen pass, and all of a sudden you get absolutely gashed. I think they've got to do something, Robbie. I don't think they can. I think they just need to give everyone a kick up the arse. Like Bobby Wagner, it's okay playing well against the Niners. Bobby Wagner's on $18 million a year. He's got, come on, if you really want Ken Norton Jr. to survive, you've got to play better than this. I look at Adams, and I'm not saying that Jamal Adams is, he's going to get a lot of attention because of the cost. I just don't think it was worth it, Robbie. I just don't see how you've spent 2 first rounders, a third rounder, and a player on this guy. That's the kind of stock that you give up to trade up into the top 5 for a quarterback. That's what Houston gave up for a young franchise left tackle. It's what LA gave up for arguably the best cornerback in the NFL. The Seahawks have done it for a safety, and they don't know how to use him properly. And everything about the construction of the defense, the game planning, all of it is wrong. And, maybe they do have to make a change. I'm not even sure Dan Quinn wants to coach. If I was Dan Quinn, I'd be like, you want me to come and coach that? My career's already on is in jeopardy after what I did in Atlanta. I'm not going there to try and fix that defense. No way. I'd tell it, I wouldn't even answer the phone if I was Dan Quinn and Pete Carroll's name flashed up on your caller ID. I'd say no. But I kind of feel like they've got to do something. Even if it's just moving Ken Norton aside and getting one of the existing staff in who maybe have a few different ideas. I don't know. I have no idea what they can or can't do at this stage because, but this is the thing, Robbie, all the way through it was all the way through the offseason. They're not done yet. And then it was, the trade deadline, they're going to do something all that. And now the trade deadline's gone. We're just looking for the next thing. It's like, well, what else can they do? Well, they can fire a coach. And then, if they fire Ken Norton, what will we talk about then? Fire Pete Carroll? Fire John Schneider? The defense is just not good enough. And I'm afraid it's time for some very serious questions to be asked. I know that the Seahawks, the media that follow the Seahawks, they've not really had to ask many difficult questions over the years because everything's been kind of good. But now is the time to ask about the construction of this defense, the way that things are being executed, the way that it's going, why things are not getting better despite Carroll's insistence that they would. Some serious questions need to be asked about this because I don't know about you, but I feel like we watched we've gone to like a fine restaurant, maybe not a fine restaurant, maybe it's a pretty bit of a crappy restaurant, and we've just been given a starter that sucks. And I kind of feel like when we get to the Rams next week, that might be the main course. And to finish things off, it might be a similar performance in the playoffs, Robbie, because I feel like we've seen this movie before. It doesn't feel to me like this team has progressed at all from last year.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. I mean, the reality is we did give up 2 first rounds and a third for Jamal Adams. This is what we have, right? The reality is this is the defense that we have going forward. We kept waiting for the next thing, and we need to get a coach in. Like, that's why you're saying what's the next thing could be, like firing Ken Norton Jr. and getting someone in. I mean, you don't even have to fire the guy, just demote him from defensive coordinator, maybe to assistant defensive coordinator, and get somebody in who's got some different ideas that can, maybe know how to use Jamal Adams in a better way and can get our defensive home. And, a couple of positives, we were waiting for a trade. Carlos Dunlap looked to be every part of what we probably need. I mean, I thought he looked great today, and definitely different than what we had, way better than having Benson Mayo out there, and even Bruce Irvin. So going forward, I think that's it's a positive. But we have to look for the next thing. If we're not, what are we going to do? If we don't have something to bitch about and something to complain about, everything's not going to be perfect. So this is the reality of our team going forward. Like, I think we can think about what we can do to actually improve it. And I think that's the next best thing. What can we do to improve this defense? It starts with the head coach or the defensive coordinator, letting him go or having him step down, and then moving forward and getting a different guy in to kind of help, facilitate the defense. The other side is just Brian Schottenheimer today. And I really like Brian. I really didn't like him when we first hired him, but I really like the way that he's come in and made some calls. Today just got out coached. I mean, they were blitzing so many times, and you saw it on the other side of the ball when we were blitzing so much. They ran the screen pass, and where ours didn't come until late in the fourth quarter. And why don't they? I don't understand. There's sometimes where he just makes boneheaded decisions, like when it's 4th down and we're going for it, 4th and 2, and we cut half the field in half. We have Russell roll to the right, everyone rolls with him, and now you've got half the field. you're giving him half the field to work with instead of opening it up, spread it out, get the players spread out, have DK run a little in, have Tyler run a hook route, and have the tight ends run out, have your corner running backs run little like dump routes. I mean, something that's available instead of just cramping it all into one side on 4th and 2. It made no sense. Like I don't understand that play call. And then of course Russ has to just throw it up for an interception. I mean, it's very frustrating sometimes the play calling, like they overthink those things when really just kind of spread it out and try to let Russ do something better than that.
You see, here's the other thing though. This is one real concern that I have, Robbie, about this team now, is that I think we've seen in this game and in the Arizona game that Russell Wilson is feeling the pressure of having to do too much. Now, when you were 14-0, it felt, I'm sat in England watching the game, and I'm kind of thinking at 14-0, hang on a minute, this game's, it's disappearing. And if I'm kind of feeling that, there must be some anxiety for Russell Wilson. He's thinking, hang on a minute, I've got to get some points here. I've got to make something happen. Otherwise, we're going to lose this game, and we're going to lose it very quickly. And you get into that situation, and it's the pressure that is on him. Because all of a sudden on 4th, he's making mistakes. He's turned the ball, I think I wrote down, is it 7 times now in their 2 losses? So since the bye week, 7 turnovers in 2 losses. This is indicative of what the pressure that the defense is putting on Russell Wilson. The whole team is saying, Russell, you've got to cover all of our issues. And I think he knows it. See, he's trying, pressing, he's doing too much, he's making mistakes. He's being reckless in a way that he's never been before in his entire career. He's going to throw by far his most touchdowns in a season this year. The fumbles. But also you're combining that, as I mentioned, Robbie, with teams treating him differently. They don't sit back in coverage and they're not giving him time. They're coming after him. They're blitzing. They're sending pressure because one, they feel confident to do it, and 2, they don't fear Seattle's defense at all. And what's happening is he's seeing ghosts. He's getting spooked. He's constant. I mean, like the fumbles, he's kind of stint. He's agitated. He's panicky. He doesn't look right. And that's, again, another impact of the way the defense is starting to impact the offense. Now, Wilson's so good. I have no doubt that down the line, we'll win a game probably like this, where the defense plays appallingly and Wilson will do enough to somehow. Minnesota's a good example of that, Robbie. He won a game in exactly those circumstances, and it will probably happen again this year. But I'm just really fearful that the blueprint is out there now. This is how you play the Seahawks. You go after Wilson, you absolutely try and hammer him, put the ghost in his head, because guess what? Seahawks have got a legit MVP candidate at quarterback, but their defense will make whoever's playing on the other side of the field look like an MVP candidate as well.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it right there. It's the blueprint for stopping the Seahawks, and the Cardinals showed it in the second half of the game when we lost to the Cardinals. They sat back originally, and then they came after us in that second half. And then you see today that the Bills, they just came after him all day. All day they applied pressure, and they got after him. They rattled him. They spooked him. He made terrible decisions, and he still had, that's why he's an MVP candidate. He still had 390 yards and whatnot, but 2 touchdowns. But you just look at it and you think, man, you got the Rams coming up, and what do the Rams do? Well, they pass the ball really well. Like they're quick. They've got better receivers than the Bills do, in my opinion, and they've got a defense that can get after you. So you start looking at it in terms of like the Rams, and that's going to be super scary. And then right after that, you got the Cardinals again, who, like I said, started the blueprint right out the gate for stopping us. So going forward, this is going to be something we're going to have to learn to adjust to, and our defense is just going to have to play better. I don't know how it is or what it is they're going to do differently, but that soft zone has got to go. Like me, I don't know if they need to just start trying to man up, playing man or what it is, but the soft zone is awful, just awful. We're giving up way too many yards on the soft zone, and even when we try to blitz and then do a soft zone, it's the Josh Allen had pick your poison. Who do you want to throw to? Everyone was open. So I mean, it doesn't really matter what you do on that soft zone. It's terrible. They need to get rid of it and think about something else.
There was one play where they kind of just threw it to Stephon Diggs, who was wide open, obviously, and then he kind of just sort of turned upfield and jogged unchallenged. I think it was in the first quarter, or it was definitely the first half. They kind of just jogged unchallenged. There was kind of like 3 Seattle defenders all stood next to each other. I don't know who they were covering, presumably, each other. Maybe they're just having a chat about what they're going to do tomorrow. And then Diggs actually had the opportunity to run towards him and slide. I don't think I've ever seen a receiver slide before. I mean, just think about that. When a running back gets into the open field, Robbie, and then they run forward and they think, in the head, they're going, get down, get down, get down. Don't take a hit, don't take a hit. And they slide. With the receiver, I mean, like, they're never in an opportunity where they've got like loads of space in front of them and they slide. They either go out of bounds or, Diggs actually had the time and the space to jog a bit, assess the situation, get a few more yards. And then in his head, he's had the time to go, actually, I could slide here, and avoid a hit. And it's done. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. The only thing you can grasp onto at this point with this defense is complete and utter blind faith. There is no fix coming whatsoever. And for me, Robbie, it's not acceptable, and it has to be challenged. There has to be serious questions asked. I know that people in Seattle don't like to do this. It seems quite it's a place that I get the sense wants to savor in the positivity, that wants to sort of enjoy its team. But the Seahawks, we should view the Seahawks differently. They're not the kind, cuddly Seahawks who we're just along for the ride here. We're talking about a window of maybe 3 years when Russell Wilson should be competing for a Super Bowl. And when you look across at the NFC, there are no big beasts in this conference. There's no Kansas City and Mahomes lurking around the corner. There's no Steelers or Ravens. This is a conference where your main competitors are people like Aaron Rodgers, who are nearly 40, Robbie, they're already planning the next stage in Green Bay. You're talking about teams in the NFC West who fluctuate all the time, year to year, whereas you've consistently been, well, the second best team in the NFC West as it happens. But this should be the time. And if we waste this period, in 10 years' time, we'll be looking back on it and going, what a missed opportunity. That as great as it was to be able to witness the Russell Wilson era, we never maxed it out. And when you spend $50 million, 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and 2 third-round picks on a defensive unit or on a team building overall, and you state directly that your priority is to fix a pass rush and sort out a defense, and then you acquire certain players like Jamal Adams and Quinton Dunbar, you've already got Quandre Diggs, and you say, okay, we've got the pieces here to do this, to do that, and you come up with this, there has to be some accountability there. I mean, there's clearly no accountability coming from ownership. Pete Carroll's accountability is coming in the form of a whacking new contract and presumably a pay increase. So there's no accountability there. So it has to come from somewhere. And if it doesn't come from the media and the fans, where is it going to come from? They have to be better than this. It's not good enough to just feel the warm glow of 6-2 and hope for the best. They could be 6-3 next week. They're going to, the Giants and Jets games are a long way off. And maybe those games will help them out. Maybe they'll split with the Rams and the Cardinals. And maybe because, this conference will cannibalize itself a fair bit, maybe 10, 11 wins will be enough to win the NFC West. Maybe that'll get you a home playoff game in the wild card. But guess what? I've kind of got used to the thought of them maybe being the number 1 seed and having a bye and actually being the team to beat in the NFC. And they're not. They're just not. Because I said in the podcast the other day, Robbie, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Baltimore, they go and beat the Bills. For me. And if you want to be in that tier, the top tier, you've got to go and win this game. The Seahawks didn't only not win the game, they got hammered.
Yeah, and I agree with you about some of the things like the accountability thing, but I just don't think you're going to see it right now. Like, you're not going to see the media be like, Pete, why aren't you trying to do whatever? Because what he's going to say is exactly what you're going to expect him to say. Well, we went out and got Carlos Dunlap. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do better. Because what Pete isn't going to do, and you should know Pete better than this, he isn't going to put his players on blast. He's not going to do that during season. He won't do it. That's not him. He's a player's coach. He will not put his players on blast. He might do it behind closed doors, but he's not going to do it in front of the media. So even if the media does ask, like, and try to hold him accountable, he's not going to put his players on blast. He's not going to say anything that's going to jeopardize the team. He doesn't want a situation where you've got Earl flipping things off. Even when that happened, when Earl flipped him off, he defended Earl to the T. Like, leave him alone. Poor guy just got an injury. He said nothing negative, nothing, and he will not say anything negative now. So, I mean, I think we should get out of that mindset of that. The Seattle media is ever going to ask him, because Pete won't ever say anything, ever say anything about it.
What I would say in counter to that is, I've done thousands of interviews in my career with the BBC, and whenever there's been a moment in that time when I've thought I've got to go and ask some difficult questions here, I've got to go and hold a coach to account, I've got to go and interview a chairman or an owner, and I'm going to ask him something, and there's a decent chance that after I've asked that question, he'll think that I'm a bit of a prick. Okay, and that's happened so many times. And I've also thought, and I kind of know what they're going to say already. I know what the answer's going to be. Sometimes it enables you to think of a counter question. If you know what the answer's going to be, you can think about what your follow-up is. Sometimes you've just got to be seen to be asking the question. Sometimes you've just got to be seen to asking you can't go into a press conference next week and say, how good is DK Metcalf? Isn't he fantastic? You can't go into the press conference and say, hey, wasn't it great to see that 8-yard run by Alex Collins before halftime? Sometimes you've just got to be seen to be asking the challenging questions, even if you know what the answer is going to be, even if you know if the Pete Carroll will play things down. You've just got to push, and you've got to probe, and you've got to challenge. That's just the way it is. And I'm telling you, actually, sometimes when you ask those difficult questions, you get really good answers. You might think that a coach will straight bat something, or will play it down, or will do anything. Sometimes they surprise you. And they're always the best press conferences. The ones where the coach says something and you think, and it makes you think, and it maybe surprises you. You don't get those moments if you don't ask the question.
Well, I don't work in the media, so I don't really know anything about that, Rob. But I will trust you on this, and I will say that you need to get a Seahawks press conference pass so you can go and do some interviews and ask some questions yourself, because you ain't getting that from Seattle media. You should know that by now.
It would be a one and done on my behalf. I'm afraid. Listen, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is where the Seahawks go from here. And I've got to admit, Robbie, that I fear for the team. I think that this is clearly a team. I said 10-6 in the off season. I always kind of feel like, look, a win either way or a loss either way, it kind of validates a prediction. If you say 10-6 and it ends up being 9-7 or 11-5, you're kind of in that range. I don't think anyone can say you were wrong if it ends up being a win or a loss either way. And I kind of feel that 10 or 11 wins is probably where this team is, because the schedule has been quite kind overall. They've managed to score 6 wins already in games that you would expect them to win, given who they were playing. And a few of them could easily have been losses. I mean, let's be right here. The New England, the Dallas game, and the Minnesota game could easily be losses. The Seahawks could be sat here with a losing record right now. That's not beyond the realms of possibility. And, they will probably beat the Jets and the Giants, although I don't want to assume anything. And they may well beat the Washington football team as well. But and if they win those 3 games, they're at 9 wins. What concerns me, Robbie, is the Niners could even be a win. So they've got the games on the schedule, haven't they, to sort of achieve what they want to. But I don't really have any appetite for going into the postseason without genuinely believing that they could do something. And it's a game like this that makes me just think, I'm not sure I see it. I'm not sure that I see a team that is ready to win maybe 3 playoff games to reach a Super Bowl and then go and tackle the Steelers or the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Titans or whoever.
Yeah, I agree with that. But here's the thing. Like I've been saying all along, as soon as you get to the playoffs, it's a different ball game, right? Things just happen differently in the playoffs. It's about getting to that dance, right? And so I want to see us get there. and give ourselves a shot to do it. Maybe that's just the positive side of me coming out. But I actually started this podcast before anyone started listening. I told Rob I have nothing positive to say, but I will say that this is probably the positive thing for me. Is it's like, at some point you can hope. I mean, you got to hang your hat on something, and if you're going to hang your hat on any sort of hope, you can hope that maybe the defense starts to gel. Maybe they start figuring some things out. We haven't seen it 8 weeks through the game or the season yet. Maybe there's a chance. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Clearly, it doesn't look like it's going very positive, but you got to hang your hat on something. And, we do have the schedule to hopefully get ourselves to 10, 11 wins. And that'll be enough to get us in the playoffs at least. And, you look at the teams, Eagles, Giants, Jets, the Washington football team, and then the Niners. I mean, and hopefully we can at least split with the Rams and something like that. And I'd like to split with the Cardinals as well. If we do that, so then you're looking at a pretty good record. So you just got to give yourself the opportunity to get in, and then hopefully something magical can happen, because you've seen teams do it, right? You've seen teams who just
have you seen a team though? Not
historically bad with the defense.
Yes, well, that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you also have Russell Wilson, who is playing, lights out. I mean, he didn't play lights out today, but he's been playing lights out. You got a team that has an opportunity. I mean, listen, this is still a good football team. They're not a great football team. They still have an opportunity to get there. I mean, we could easily have a losing record, but we don't. The reality is we have a winning record. Going forward, we need to just the defense it just needs it. It needs to gel. It needs to start figuring it out. And I'm tired of hoping.
I just don't. I mean, for me, I don't think they are. I don't think they're a good team. I think they've got an exceptional quarterback, and I think that they have some other individuals who would get on any roster in the NFL. Obviously there are certain teams that wouldn't need Dwayne Brown if they've got an elite left tackle, let's say, but players like Dwayne Brown would get on most rosters. Clearly, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett would. Bobby Wagner has not played very well, but clearly he would get on most rosters, as would someone like Jamal Adams. But I don't think they're a great team. I think that they're a team that is heavily propped up by Russell Wilson. And as I mentioned earlier, I think my concern, Robbie, is that increasingly teams are finding out that if you, like I said, cut the head off the snake will die. It can't get you anymore. And they're coming after Russell, and we're seeing 7 turnovers in 2 defeats. Now, I just feel like I want to be as confident as you about, well, if you just get to, but I kind of feel like we've done that for the last 5 years. Just get to the post in 2015, and everything was chaotic with Cam's holdout and losing the first 2. Just get there, and then you end up getting blown out by the Panthers. 2016, all of the injuries and stuff like that. Just get there. They're getting blown out by the Falcons. 2017, it's a mess. They don't even make the playoffs. Blair Walsh. 2018, reset. Just get there. Lose to the Cowboys in really disappointing fashion. 2019, the defense ain't great. Just get there, though. Russell Wilson, really good. You never know. Get blown out by the Packers. It's kind of like eventually you just sort of think, well, hang on a minute. I need reasons to believe. I kind of feel like it's Groundhog Day. And that's what I always feared in the offseason, was that the same thing is just going to happen again, that they'll be good enough to get to the playoffs, but then they will face a team, and it could easily be a repeat of what we've seen today. I can just see it in Lambeau Field in January. Aaron Rodgers doing exactly what Josh Allen did today, and the Seahawks having to scramble from 20 points down again like they did last season, or maybe it's not Aaron Rodgers, maybe it's Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. I can just see it so easily.
Yeah, I mean, so can I. I can see that as well. But I'm trying to give people something to hope for. Like, you got to hang your hat on something, right? I mean, we could easily just say, well, the season's lost. This is just who they are. We're going to lose, and why watch the games, right? But at this point, I'm trying to hang my hat on something that can be like, okay, going forward, you've seen teams do it. That's all I'm saying. You've seen teams go into the playoffs who have the Giants, for example, have done it, with Eli Manning. You just didn't think they would have a chance to do it, and they came in. Granted, they had a much better pass rush going in than we did. They play defense really well. So yeah, I mean, historically it's very different, but I want to see us get there. Another reason I want to see us get there, Rob, is we gave up a first-round draft pick. if you're going to give up a first, at least make it be almost like close to a second round pick. Make it be like, you know, you don't want a high first round pick and having blown that. So win as many games as you can, get as far as you can possibly get, so you're not giving up as much as you did originally going forward. That's kind of a weird positive way to look at it, but in my mind, Russell Wilson is still playing really good football. I still think he's the MVP frontrunner regardless of today's game. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's done. He's done." Well, I don't think so. I've seen, you know, Aaron Rodgers had a bad game a couple weeks ago, and you wanted to bring Josh Allen back in it. Well, he's played terrible the last 3 weeks, or whatever. I'm not convinced that Russ isn't the guy this year. Going forward, we'll see how he plays, but I'm still convinced right now he's the front runner. I actually don't care about I don't care about the MVP. Like, if he gets it, whatever, great, that's awesome. But it's not for me. That's not really important. I want to see him get far in the playoffs, get to that Super Bowl, and win it. That's what I really want.
I think the MVP frontrunner after today is Mr. Patrick Mahomes. He's just not turning the ball over. They're 8-1. He's playing very, very well as well. And that's the thing, is that you know, Russell was leading the MVP race for a long time last season early on as well. And then Lamar Jackson just pulled away. And then it was a comfortable win for Lamar in the end. And I don't know. I think the way that the defenses are going to play Russell now, I fear for his MVP hopes, because I think that Mahomes is going to be there every step. Mahomes just doesn't make mistakes really, and he's enough of the big name. I think that could be an issue. But like you, I don't really care about the MVP. I want to see the Seahawks do well. I appreciate your willingness to balance things out, Robbie, with some positivity.
It's tough because I came into this podcast.
Yeah. Well, you said you weren't going to do it.
I wasn't going to be positive at all.
And you've done it, and you've managed to find some positivity. I do worry a lot that this is just, you know, this is like the fifth time in a row we've seen this, or sixth time, whatever it is, since 2014. I just want to see. I want to believe in the Seahawks. I want to believe in them as a Super Bowl team, not a postseason team. I don't want to waste away the Wilson era. And you know, right now, if I had to make a prediction right now, I think we'll be sat here in January having watched the game a bit like this, and I'll be having a moan about it being history repeated again, Robbie. And then about a week later, we'll be having a conversation about what they need to do. And I think they're going to have to make some serious decisions, because I don't think that, as constructed, this team is right. And I think they're going to have some very difficult decisions to make in terms of coaching staff, in terms of, you know, you've got no draft picks, and you've got some big, big decisions, and you've got very few assets that, you know, because you're not going to trade Russell, and you're not going to trade DK Metcalf, and I don't think you're going to trade Tyler Lockett. I think you have to keep the core around Wilson. But on defense, I think you'll start looking at it and you think, well, actually, is the investment $20 million a year on Jamal Adams and all the picks you've given up the right way to go? Or do you want to try and salvage something from that? Is Bobby Wagner worth however much his cap hit's going to be for the next few years? These are decisions that you are going to have to make. And I don't know, man. I'm looking at that. I'm just turning around and seeing Arizona score a touchdown against Miami. I don't think that they're far from complete. Got something about them though, haven't they? And the Seahawks don't win the NFC West this year with Russell Wilson, then they need to answer to that.
Yeah, and this offseason, there's going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered, and that's where you're going to see a lot of that come into play.
Yeah, and as I'm speaking as well, Dallas have just gone 10-0 up against Pittsburgh as well. So maybe it is just a crazy day. Maybe it is a crazy day. We'll see. I don't know. I feel pretty deflated about this loss, though. And I do wonder how other fans will feel about it. I'm sure there'll be a lot that will try and find the positives. I think this was a bit of a reality check, though. And just to let you know, in the end, total yards given up another 420 yards today. Seattle almost around about 50% given up again on third down. Another 44 points conceded. Eventually, hoping that things will turn isn't going to be enough. There has to be some evidence of that. Have you got a final thought, Robbie?
Yeah, just all credit to the Bills. I mean, they came out and played awesome today. The play calling was incredible, and they brought it to us in a way that I wasn't expecting. You know, and like I said, I came into it like super positive. I thought for sure it was going to be a couple touchdown win for us, and instead it was the opposite way, and they came out and put it to us. So I mean, you know, good on them for doing that. Just hopefully that the Seahawks can learn from this and actually like adjust, because we've seen it happen second half against the Cardinals. Now we've seen basically a whole game with the Bills. Same thing. We need to figure it out on offense and defense going forward. But yeah, you're right. This offseason is going to be one of those off seasons where there's going to be a lot of changes. And you're going to start asking yourself, is Bobby worth $19 million? You know, you drafted someone like Jordan Brooks, can he fill in, or whatever the case might be. And you got to wonder, it's not worth it, and especially with the cap hit probably going down, and not having any draft picks, and we're gonna need to gain some draft picks, and you're gonna start to wonder, like, I know Jamal has one more year of contract after this. He's not gonna want to play on that. You have to start wondering, do we trade him for another first for someone else, or whatever the case might be. There's gonna be some tough questions to answer this offseason, but as of right now, those aren't the questions we can ask, right? We'll figure it out this offseason. Right now, let's see how we can focus on getting better now. So hopefully they're working on that.
Yeah, I worry that's coming though, that conversation. I really do. I cannot wait to talk about the Rams game in midweek. That is going to be a barrel of laughs. Man, that is a huge game next week. If the Seahawks fall to 6-3 and go 1-3 in this run, wow. That is gonna be a huge talking point. And you're right, fair play to the Bills as well. I don't know if there would be a Buffalo Bills fan who has lasted this long on the podcast. Certainly they deserve some respect. Given the numbers we had for our last podcast when the Seahawks lost, I'm not even sure many Seahawks fans would have got this far. However, if you did, give us a shout out in the comments section. Let us know that you heard this message and you listened to the very end. Then we'll know who's with us all the way through, even on a day like this. Right, Robbie, good chat to you. Good to chat to you as always. Hopefully better news next week. Never fun doing these things after a loss. For more analysis, go over to SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Like and share the video. Like seems like a funny word today, but I think it helps it get it out there a little bit more. And we'll see you in the week.